onto the albums proper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think, Matt, you're kicking things off.
I am first, yeah. Arches of Loaf, with their album VEE VEE. In the opening montage, you heard a clip from Harnessed in Slums, and now you're going to hear a clip from Fabrico. All right, so let me. I got to get the numbers here. So, Arches of LOAF-VEE VEE comes in at number 881 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 99 in 1995, number 5,233 of all time. It's Arches of Loaf's second highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind 1993's Icky Metal, which we did not get around to covering, and that did not make Rolling Stone's list. And Arches of Loaf is ranked number 1,709. Of overall artists on Best Ever Albums. So this is their second album, released on March 6, 1995. The genres for them include indie rock and noise rock. I looked up on All Music for influences and who they influenced. There's not a really extensive list here. They influenced by Pavement, and they influenced Japan Droids and Oso Oso. So there you go. Very short list there. I'm sure there's more to it than that, but... So brief history. I don't have a ton of stuff on these guys. There wasn't a whole lot, but they were formed in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, the University of North Carolina in 1991, where they all met. While they met there, all four members were from Asheville in Western North Carolina. They include Eric Bachman on vocals and guitar, Eric Johnson on guitars, Matt Gentling on bass, and Mark Price on drums. They released their first single was a song called "Wrong," kind of similar to what John was just talking about. This single was given away free with the first issue of Stay Free magazine, so a promotional song.
What is that magazine?
It's still. I just saw that it's still out there, but it's a smaller magazine that's available. They later signed with indie label Alias Records and released their second single, "Web in Front," in February of 1993. Some of you might have recognized that song in Season 5 of Beavis and Butthead or on the Mallrats soundtrack, where it made its appearance as well. Their first album, Icky Metal, released in September of 1993, and they also released an EP in 1994 called Versus the Greatest of All Time. And they then released this album, VEE VEE, and after the release of this, they were courted by major label Maverick Records, but they turned down that offer as they actually would have been in debt to them, because I guess Maverick would have bought out their contract with Alias, and so they automatically would have been in debt to Maverick, so they wanted no part of that. And they also didn't want to be associated with other Maverick artists at the time, which included Candlebox and Alanis Morissette. They opened for Weezer in 1995, but their sound did not always jive well with the Weezer fans. So I don't know if they got booed or whatever, but they weren't always greeted with the greatest affection by the fans. They released a third album, All the Nation's Airports, in 1996, which was more accessible than their previous records, and it took 3 weeks to record, which was the longest they ever needed to record a record. Their final album, White Trash Heroes, was released in 1998. And they eventually broke up in that year. After, I guess, Price, their drummer, had a carpal tunnel syndrome and had surgery for it, and they kind of just disbanded, and pretty much they went out and just formed other bands. They did solo projects, stuff like that. But they did eventually come back together in 2011 to play various shows, and they actually released an album in 2022 called Reason in Decline. So I think one of the reasons it took them so long to do a new album was they basically kind of had that self-awareness thing where, they realized, we're older now and we don't want to put an album out of like the same thing. It's just not going to be as good, and we don't really know exactly what our new sound would be. So it probably took a while for them to find that. So yeah, not a ton of data info on these guys, but they seem pretty, in terms of, not going after the major label and, not just cashing in on trying to do more albums if they didn't see right, then I don't know, seems like this band has a decent amount of integrity, I would say. But yeah, maybe first and only time we're covering Arches of Loaf. Curious as to your thoughts. Let's start with Josh.
Yeah, I put this in the category of pleasant surprises that we've discovered, because I really like this album. It's kind of got this, I don't know, post-hardcore, post-punk, emo edge to it, but it's also like solid rock and roll. The singer's voice is pretty strained all the time, so that your mileage may vary on that. The Harnessed in Slums song is such a good song that I just replayed it after the first time I heard it. I was like, whoa, this song is like, because you hear the first song, Step Into the Light, and you're like, okay, this is pretty good. Then you hear that song, you're like, whoa, what is this band? And I thought nothing reaches the heights of that song on this album, but the rest of the album is pretty solid. And I thought that I really liked, you know, kind of the guitar and the rhythm section on all of these songs. They just kind of do different things. They like they slow it down at times. They speed it up. They've got it's all kind of guitar based. There's no kind of extra instruments or anything, but they do really interesting melodies, and like every song has kind of this unique hook to it that sets it apart. I think ultimately that's why I responded to the album so much, is they've got like some really good hooks as on other songs as well. I liked Underdogs of Napomo. That's a song, the 5th track. I liked Nostalgia. I thought that was good. You know, they kind of, I like Death in the Park. They do the kind of repetition thing that we've seen with some other indie rock bands. I can't remember who comes to mind. I'd have to think. Maybe Cop Shoots Cop or something like that. And yeah, it finishes strong too with Underachievers, March and Fight song, the second to last, or the last track. It's kind of a nice finisher, and this was you know, this goes into the just rock bands that I knew by name but didn't ever hear their music before, but I'm pleasantly surprised by it. And there's quite a few that are coming up in the 90s like that. So it was a good it was my favorite album of the week for this batch. So thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I color me in the same lane, Josh. I knew nothing of Arches of Loaf. I didn't even know anything about sort of what I was going to be listening. I figured they would be a rock band, but I didn't know like what lane, and what an interesting package they are. You're right, Josh. There's, I apologize. I'm clearing my throat. There's an emo element to this. We're in that element where that period of time, I should say, where the beginning stirrings of emo are coming, like, you know, prehistoric man coming out of the swamps. Like, that's where I feel like we're starting to go with emo at the beginning stages. And it's certainly here. It's got a little bit of what like Jawbreaker and some of those bands had, where it's sort of hardcore as well as being emo. That mix, I've kind of come to realize that post-hardcore and proto-emo are kind of almost completely melded together, because that is where it sort of moved, right? Like, and this also has a lot of discordant guitar parts, sort of like you'd see in like a Pavement type deal, where they're you know, they're playing notes that are off the traditional scales, and discordant notes along the way, and it's got an indie rock vibe too. The production is, you know, pretty basic, I'd say. It's the sounds are pushed to the forward. It's not clean, I would say. It's not gritty or dirty, and it's not like the Guided by Voices we did, where it's pushed so far back that it sounds so lo-fi, but it definitely is a more bare production, stripped down, and it's almost like they're playing live for you, is how I would describe this album. The sound of it. Like, I got like a feel of what it would be like to see these guys live. Lyrically, they're a little bit like ironic punk rock too, I would say. A song like Nostalgia was pretty funny. It's like a minute and 30, and it's about exactly what you think, like growing older and kind of like wondering, you know, what's cool and what's not anymore. And then you're right, Josh, Hardest in Slums is a good song. Although the first time I heard it, I thought like a car was backing up near me, so I didn't process that was part of the song. So that one threw me a little bit, but yeah, overall, it breezed by this album. Even though it was 44 minutes, it didn't feel that long, and there was enough variety in the song. It was an interesting mix also thematically. Like a third of the songs were like anthemic, right? A third of the songs were like fist pumpers, I'd say, in some ways, like heavy, and a third were like sort of like contemplative songs. And each of the songs fell into one of those three categories, but it was pretty much an even split, and they were dispersed throughout the album. So thematically, this is not a bad thing. Thematically, it didn't immediately strike me as having one specific theme, right? It kind of covered a lot of different topics. I wouldn't necessarily say it had a ton of different sounds, but it had just enough variety in it for like a little bit more of a well-balanced diet of music. So yeah, this was a thumbs up for me. I enjoyed this one.
Yep. Make it 3. I've heard of these guys, never knew any of their songs, and really, really like this record. I agree, Josh. It's my favorite of the week. And remind me of, John, I think we covered, remember Lungfish? We did that Lungfish record.
I like this album a lot better than that one.
But I do too, but I think it's a similar kind of vibe in terms of the, I think you're right. I think it definitely, even though I didn't see it in the quote unquote descriptions of the genre, but there's definitely like post-hardcore, proto-emo, that type of vibe going on for sure. Definitely picked up on, the Pavement influence. And I'm surprised I didn't see Sonic Youth as an influence as well, because that strikes me as kind of like there's some
I'm sure they were
there.
Yeah.
But I liked that this was a callback to other artists that actually, which probably not a callback, but artists that are yet to come, like Titus Andronicus, right, or Modest Mouse. I think that there's similarities, with some of those bands that are yet to come still. So
there's a little Sunny Day Real Estate in this too.
Proto emo, like Built to Spills and other, stuff like that. And so and like Dinosaur Jr., like all these bands that like I just know that whether we've covered them or have yet to cover them, it's right in my lane of just really great indie rock, that's lo-fi, that has a variety of it's like off-kilter notes, like kind of misplaced things a little. Sometimes maybe it's sloppy, but it just all fits so well, because at the end of the day, what's it got? It's got some pretty good melodies. It's got some pretty good grooves, and
the songs build traditionally. And that's like, I think the key for you, Matt, right? We've talked about like it's a traditional template, just with the way it gets there, the path
and
is off.
And there's definitely some building here, and and I like that discordant sound along with the pop sound melded together. So pretty much every song I loved on this. There were some, and definitely I think probably I wouldn't say I loved this the first time that I heard it, but I've listened to it probably 3 or 4 times this week, and as it went along, today was the last day. I listened to it in the car on the way to work, and I just had, like, for several songs, I just had a smile on my face. I'm like, yep, I'm getting it. I'm in the pocket here, as John would say, right? I'm in the pocket with this record. And you're right, it breezes by. Like, even though it kind of has a similar sound throughout, they do enough of mixing it up between a harder, faster song with more of a lower paced, lower tempo song. And it's just great. It sounds really, really, really solid. I love this sound. I love this type of rock music, and I want to go back and listen to. I want to hear that. Was it that other? What's their highest rated album? Icky Metal. Like, okay, that's better than this. Sign me up. I'd love to listen to that as well. So nice find here. I'm glad we covered it, and big thumbs up for me.
I would also say that last track, Underachiever's March and Fight song, sounded like Neutral Milk Hotel. Like in some ways, that was like the note I wrote down at the end. So
yep, they've got that fight. Another band that I like a lot. So yeah,
It had like a toy like horn in it or something. It had this like like lo-fi sound that worked really well for whatever. Although I will say that I find the name of the band kind of like really bad. Like if you saw, it's just like nonsense.
That's not the best.
Yeah, but I'm glad. It transcended the music, transcended the name.
I couldn't really find any explanation of the band name either. So,
all right. I am next with 3-6 Mafia, and in the opening montage, the name of the album is Mystic Styles, and in the opening montage, you heard Back Against the Wall, and now you're going to hear Break the Law 95.
Nigga recognize the 666 shit. It's so fucking thick, we gotta